welcome to you all at home.
You've still got a chance to win this race, haven't you?
Just drive. I wanna be the only one to make you
Oh, you have no idea how nice it is to be able to play that intro again. Hi guys, Harrison1 back at it once again with a brand new video for you, and welcome to Dre TV. Consider this the upgrade on the online racer, because now I don't actually have to play the game online anymore. Great! Hopefully this will actually make the video look a little bit nicer presentation-wise, rather than having to deal with pretty crummy online gameplay sometimes, because other players are dicks, and I don't really have a desire to play this game online this year, so why not bring back a name which you guys all seem to know and love? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about McLaren in this episode, and McLaren is a very interesting team at the moment, and they're kind of a team that's in flux, and, you know, kind of going through a bit of a transitional period at the moment as my phone goes off. But yeah, thanks, Kraken. Anyway, yeah, they're kind of going through an interesting situation at the moment, and there's a lot of question marks, and there's a lot of change going on in Woking right now. You may have missed it, but I put an article to one of my I put an article about this on my website, basically called McLaren, Honda, and the Ultimate Transition, which is on there, by the way, right now. You can just go to harrison101.com and go into the blog section. I might put a link to it in the description as well. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting one at the moment, because here's the deal: they have Jenson Button and they have Kevin Magnussen as their current drivers, and after many years of being associated with Mercedes, you know, in whatever capacity, in terms of sponsorships, in terms of engine suppliers and whatnot, and obviously combining their efforts in the past, and obviously now Mercedes have their own factory teams. That's obviously no longer a thing, but they were still running their engines. Not anymore, as we obviously have probably known for quite a long time. It was only made official a couple of weeks ago that McLaren are definitely switching to Honda power next year, and that in itself is a huge gamble. I mean, I don't understand how this makes sense, to be honest, in the sense of McLaren already have the #1 engine in the sport. They already have the best and #1 supplied engine in the sport. What are the odds that Honda end up being better? Especially given the rumours that Mercedes have probably got another 50 brake horsepower on their cars coming next year, which is just a ridiculous story in itself. Like, the best somehow are getting better because they can get another 40 horsepower out of their cars. So the pure Mercs engine on its own can produce 850 brake horsepower. You're probably looking at over 1,000 once you factor in the electrics and the power units and whatnot all in, which is ridiculous in itself. I mean, going away from the best engine supplier in the sport is risky business, and Honda, you know, Honda's have a tendency to be ridiculously reliable. Their road cars never have engine failures or anything like that. They are ridiculously well made. Some of the best made engines in the world. Like, I think I still remember to this day the fact that Honda's VTEC engines in their S2000s have never had an engine failure. Ever. Which is ridiculous when you consider those things rev to nearly 10,000 RPM. But, yeah. Mentioning that, going away from the best engine in the sport is, you know, a debatable move at best, quite frankly, and something I'm not entirely sure I can get my head around. But, then you've got the drivers. And the drivers, you know, bring up quite an obvious dilemma. It's looking very likely that Fernando Alonso is going to be driving for them next year. It's not confirmed, but with Vettel at Ferrari a formality, Raikkonen saying he wants to stay on past 2016 when his contract expires, it's obvious Fernando's going to be the one to have to heave-ho, and it looks like he'll be moving on for one last roll of the dice at McLaren Honda to try and win that elusive third title he so desperately craved over the last few years. It's kind of really, like I said, his last shot at it, really, because Alonso's 34 next year, and you can't expect him to be around for much longer. And it poses quite an interesting question as to who would make way for Fernando Alonso. And you know, it's a difficult predicament where like McLaren don't really have a standout driver, and McLaren have got two different dynamics going on here. You have Jenson Button. Now, Jenson Button, I think, very quietly is having a very good season at McLaren this year. I think he's something like 9th in the Drivers' Championship at the moment in that midfield level McLaren. He's got over 70 points. He's doing a really, really good job with a car that is midfield quality right now. I mean, to crack the 100-point barrier in a midfield car would be a very impressive achievement and a testament to just how good Jenson Button is. I mean, obviously Jenson's a world champion from 2009, but I actually think his McLaren tenure has cemented just how good he actually is, especially considering he's 34 years old right now and is still driving as well as I've ever seen him do. Was very unlucky, you know, not to have a second podium at Britain, for example. He was gunning down Daniel Ricciardo at a rate of knots. Yeah, he had that, obviously, that third place in Australia, but yeah, just overall, just Jenson's been very, very good this season again, and doesn't really justify getting rid of him because Jenson has been excellent this season. He's been excellent ever, you know, his entire time at McLaren. He's been excellent, and then you've got Kevin Magnussen. Now, Magnussen's much more intriguing, in my opinion. Magnussen is a guy who, remember, this is the guy that McLaren moved on from after Sergio Perez. Perez was meant to be the next big thing after 2012, a season where he had 3 podium finishes. He was the Hamilton replacement, remember? And they hyped Perez up. Perez was a little bit disappointed in his first season with the team, but then you're comparing him to Jenson Button, a guy who's a world champion and who's been with the team for 4 years. So what were they really expecting to get out of Sergio? And then when the rumours, you know, went around last year that Magnussen may be going to Red Bull's driver program instead, McLaren kind of had their backs to the wall. It was either sack Perez early and make sure you give Magnussen the race seat to make absolutely dead certain that, you know, that you don't let go of one of your prime talents in Kevin Magnussen. Either give him the race seat now or lose him to Red Bull. So McLaren were clearly really high on Magnussen, and that's probably the reason why they were willing to move Perez on and then put Magnussen in the seat. And now Alonso's in the background, and it's like, well, what do we do? Do we move on with Jenson, the guy you build the team around? Because Jenson's a great guy. You know, he's a very good marketing head. He's incredibly popular. His World Championship win in 2009 probably put a lot more British eyes on the sport without many people even realising. And he's just as popular as Lewis Hamilton in this country, I would say, especially amongst the older viewers. But he's one of those guys who is very marketable, very popular, is willing to play the team game when it comes down to it. He was willing to help Hamilton out in 2012, so he's not afraid to, you know, be the team player, help out, listen to team orders, you know, get behind people. He's a very, very good asset to have in any Formula 1 team, up or down the field. And then you got Kevin Magnussen, the guy who had a podium in his very first race. He came second in Australia early in the season. That seems like such a long time ago already. But he, remember, in his very first race, he came in second. Looked like he'd already been driving for 5 years. You know, he's already scored more points this season than Perez did at his entire time at McLaren. He is ahead of Kimi Räikkönen in the Drivers' Championship. He's got a shot of a top 10 spot, which would be a fantastic achievement for his very first season in Formula 1. And, you know, he's not afraid to get stuck in. I mean, yes, he's had a couple of, you know, debatable penalties in there. But overall, I think he's been very, very good, Magnussen, and a guy that looks like he belongs. And his racecraft will only get better. As I said, he's only a 22-year-old rookie. He will definitely get better. The question is, how much better do you think he's going to be? And to me, in my opinion, I think McLaren have invested too much in Magnussen to let him go now. Like, how silly would McLaren be if they signed Perez, let Perez go thinking Magnussen was going to be the real deal, and then let Magnussen go for Alonso? Don't get me wrong, Alonso is clearly an upgrade on, You know, he's clearly an upgrade on Magnussen. That obviously goes without saying. Alonso might be the best driver in the world right now, but how silly would you look to make all that effort for Magnussen, put all that investment in him, only to let him go when the next big thing, when Alonso rolls around? And do you want to go with the short-term plan of having Alonso and Button alongside each other, have the best possible team you can afford, and go all out for the championship, assuming Honda have a good package with the McLaren car? Or do you think about the future? Do you tell Button thanks for the memories, but we're going to de-employerize you, in Ron Dennis speak? And do you go with Alonso and Magnussen for a couple of years and then move on from that? Because you got to remember as well with McLaren, they still have the very, very fast Stoffel Vandoorne waiting in the wings as well, who's currently third in the GP2 World Championship, is incredibly talented and is incredibly fast. Remember, you've got to remember, he's a rookie and he's coming third in the championship. Only Felipe Nazar and Joylan Palmer who are above him in that championship, and Palmer has been around in that league for a long time. So it's no surprise that Palmer won the championship this year, given his experience and relative talent. But Stoffel Vandoorne is right there waiting in the rings as well. So I have no doubt in my mind that Scott Woodward told me years ago that eventually Magnussen and Vandoorne will be the drivers at McLaren. It's just a matter of when, rather than if. So, if you're Ron Dennis, what do you do? Do you go Button Alonso? Do you go Alonso Magnussen? And, when do you pull the trigger on Vandoorne? If you ever pull the trigger on Vandoorne. It's a very interesting dynamic, and let me know, what do you think McLaren are going to finish next year? Like, where do you think they'll end up? I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this one. But until next time, I've been Harrison, and thank you very much for watching Dre TV, and I'll catch you guys next time. Sayonara.